This is the plaintiff, Lauren Massiter. She says the defendant cabled one of her trees to another tree on her property, which caused one of the trees to split. Now she has to cut down the tree because her neighbor complained to her town about it, and the defendant should be made to pay. She's suing for $2,415 for the removal of the tree and damages he caused to her property. This is the defendant, John. He says his company was hired to cable one tree to another because of the potential danger of it falling down. A week later, Hurricane Sandy hit with a vengeance, and a number of trees were damaged. Her damaged trees had absolutely nothing to do with his cables, and he can't be held responsible for an act of God. He's accused of being unsupportive.
All parties, please raise your right hand. Be seated. Come to order, please. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
Welcome.
Lauren Massiter, you are suing John's company. He's asked us not to refer to his company by name, and we'll respect that. You are suing John's company, which is a tree expert company, for $2,415. The cost to remove a damaged tree and other trees that, according to you, they damaged when they did some work on your property. Tell me what happened.
Okay, so I have lived on my property for 20 years. I have approximately 20 trees. And with weather conditions as they have been in the past several years, things have happened. So last year, 2011, October, there was an ice storm, and I had a big tree that was uprooted and fell across the side of my backyard. Didn't do any damage to anything, but it fell over. The year before that, my neighbors, their tree fell on their roof. So with all this happening, they're very afraid of my trees. Mind you, these trees are about 100 years old and they have never killed anybody. So they're like afraid of my like killer trees. And I don't want to hurt anybody.
Here's a letter from the neighbor dated back in December of 2011. Branches from the trees on your property have already caused substantial damage to our gutters, and the continued presence of other trees pose a risk to the structural integrity of our house as well as the safety of our family members and pets. We've informed you of this risk, have attempted to secure your cooperation. Specifically, we have offered to cable one tree and remove another. So they offer to you, we'll pay to remove this tree and cable this other tree, which we're worried about because it's leaning over so much on our property.
And you have my letter, Your Honor, that I responded?
The one dated January 5th, 2012? Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So you respond to your neighbors, permission is granted for you to do the following at your expense: cable one tree to another and remove a tree that grows directly over your property. There is no problem with the removal of the tree, but there is a problem with the cabling. Now, the plaintiff's neighbor hires you, and did you approve of his hiring?
Yes.
Okay, because you had said something originally in your complaint about how she didn't use the person you wanted him to use, but I see in the letter that all you ask is that they consult on this arborist.
Like I said, I don't want my trees to hurt anyone.
Okay,
I don't want them to
did you
post.
consult with this arborist, Scott
Lamb?
Did you consult with him back?
Of course.
Okay. And what did he told you?
To cable the one tree and to remove the other questionable tree. Unfortunately, there's on the right of her house, there are a cluster of 3 specific trees that were a concern to her neighbor. There's a process called phototropia, where trees grow toward the sun. And because of that phototropic presence where all of those trees in that cluster are literally leaning.
Every time you do that, I feel like doing a yoga pose.
Yeah, it's YMCA, right? Yeah.
No, not YMCA, a yoga pose.
Oh, there you go. Sorry.
All right. So now, you go to do the cable work, and how many different ways are there to cable a tree to a tree? Infinite number, or is there?
Well, with 2 very basic types of cabling. There's direct cabling, which is from one lead or one tree to another, and spoke and hub where multiple trees, and if there are multiple leads, 3 or more that are involved.
All right. So you can either hook one tree to another, that's just tree to tree, and that's called what?
That's called direct cable.
Direct cable, or you do spoke and hub, which is like a wheel, and you connect a bunch of trees to each other.
Correct.
In this case, you did
direct cable with a very short span.
What specs did she give you? Let me see the specs she gave you, because the only thing I see is you can cable one tree to another. So certainly the direct part.
Yeah, it's simply the letter from her neighbor and her response.
Yeah, cable one tree to another. Okay, so you do that when? You direct cable the trees when?
It was October 26th, 3 days prior to
so we're all sitting around talking about the superstorm Sandy coming up, the monster storm of the century, and it actually hit when?
The 29th.
The 29th, 3 days later.
And it's
all right, so Hurricane Sandy hits, and what happens to these trees?
Nothing.
So why are you here?
I'm here because my neighbor went to the town and said, oh, she has to remove a split tree and another tree, the one that's next to it. The two trees together, the tree is split since the cabling.
Well, just to be clear, when we're calling it a split tree,
It's bifurcated.
Meaning the branches have bifurcated?
Yes. The split tree was cabled to the other tree that was curved. However, I have an expert testimony that says they didn't cable it properly. And also the removal of the one tree.
Which is the tree that you had to remove?
Well, it's bifurcated and it's split.
It's bifurcated by God and split by his negligence.
Cabling.
Tell me what, like, it's
improper cabling.
Okay, but what's wrong with it? Why are you suing him?
Because the township told me I have to take the split tree down and pay another $2,050.
Okay, but why? What did he do wrong that makes him have to pay you?
Welcome back to the People's Court. Harvey Levin here. Does it really matter what this guy did to the tree if Hurricane Sandy knocked this tree down?
No, not at all. It's an act of God. So the person couldn't figure out what they were going to do.
But isn't it a little bit unfair? Because you may have a situation where somebody does something negligently to the tree, but they don't have to pay because a hurricane happened to hit.
Yeah, exactly.
So is that person responsible if he was negligent, or does the hurricane cancel it all out?
No, the hurricane canceled it all out.
The hurricane cancels it out so he gets a free ride?
Yeah, it's the hurricane. The Mother Nature is the fault, right?
Nature is the fault.
Yes.
Got your point? Going inside the courtroom.
Let me see the paperwork from the township that says you have to take the tree down because the cabling was done improperly. What happened to those trees with the cable?
I have several photographs that I think paint a better picture, literally.
Okay.
The bifurcated tree split in the crotch. It's what.
Oh, that sounds so painful.
Well, and it's what's called a V crotch. This is science. Arboriculture is science. So.
That's why I'm trying to quell all the jokes that are coming to the forefront of my brain.
Of course.
All right, let me see that.
So, sorry about that.
So it split at the crotch. Oh, I see. No, I do see. Where I see the light shining through right there.
Yes, ma'am. And if you look below that V crotch.
Come over here.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a second. Show me.
So here is where the original crotch was.
Right.
It has split here, and actually, if you see the white line here, it's splintering even below the picture. And it's
Where's the cable? Point to the cable.
This is the cable. That's straight line.
This line right here?
It's a braided stainless steel cable.
That line right there.
Yes, ma'am. And the fracture occurred about 3-4 feet above it. So it by no means did it split anywhere near where the lag bolt and the cable was supported.
Right. Okay. Go ahead and step back. Now let me see. You have a report by an expert witness that you want me to look at, which is Richard Wallowitz.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So he wrote the words improper cabling in here. Okay. According to your expert, as the leaning tree moved in the wind, the pressure exerted on the cable caused the weak area of the larger oak tree to split apart and now warrants its removal. Using an additional cable to support the upper crown of the larger oak was an option that should have been considered. This would have provided additional supplemental support to the upper portion of the canopy. So he's suggesting that it should have occurred to you to do what?
His ultimate recommendation was to install an additional support cable in tree number 2 in my photographs, which is the bifurcated tree.
Okay.
Judge, the point that we're missing here is that the Masseters allowed her neighbor to do necessary maintenance on her trees at their expense.
Oh, I see. You're hired by the neighbor. You're being paid by the neighbor. The neighbor was only concerned about this other tree falling over. And if she wants her bifurcated tree strapped to itself, then she needs to pay for that.
Correct.
Here's a problem. I'm having a couple problems, but let me read to you this little part right here.
Me too.
While Hurricane Sandy caused much tree damage in the surrounding communities, none of the trees in the Masseters' yard were uprooted from the storm. However, judging from what was observed in this backyard, the methodology used in the installation seems to have been short-sighted and contributed to the failure of a tree. Okay, the problem is not one place does your expert say that the way he cabled it caused the damage. What he's saying is that he could have cabled your tree while he was at it and saved the damage. Maybe. We're not sure. Now, you also have part of your lawsuit is damage to some bamboos that, according to you, he did when he did the cabling.
I have that right here. Okay, that's the right way. So they took the tree and they shaved it and got the root down and the stump.
Okay, what I see is a branch of a bamboo down. Right here?
Yeah.
And then what is it you're saying, that they owe you $205 over the branch?
That pile is my old tree.
Right.
It fell on top of my bamboo and they didn't do anything to save my bamboo.
What's your response to that?
The tree was removed, the tree from her property leading into the neighbors. After we removed the tree, she demanded that we grind the stump and the root. She didn't want the stump intact. Perhaps some of the mulch.
Is this the first time you hear about bamboos
Yes,
in the
ma'am.
lawsuit?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have any proof that you mentioned bamboos before today?
No.
Kind of hard to kill a bamboo, right?
Very hard, yes, ma'am.
Well, he found a way.
Okay. Yeah, based on what I've heard, I rule in favor of the defendant in this case.
So a lot of testimony on both sides. Ultimately, the defendant wins this case. Here, turn around this way, and what's your reaction to that?
I'm bored. I'm going home.
So that leaves it up to you.
Yes, sir.
You bored and going home too?
Going home.
Your testimony was pretty exact in there. Was there anything you could have done to maybe foresee a problem on her tree?
Unfortunately, no. There's long history between the two neighbors, and it's good fences make good neighbors. And it's unfortunate. I feel bad that she's upset at losing, but I feel vindicated.
Okay, over to Harvey.
Okay, I've talked about this before, but if you have a neighbor with who has a precarious tree where they haven't done what they need to do to it, you send them an email, you put them on notice. If anything happens, then they're in trouble. That will do it for this case. Litigants for the next case on the way into the courtroom right now.